Which? It was a store, Black's Market, something like that. And then it was Gottschalk's tire storage and training room. If you ever got trained to work at Gottschalk's, you were in there and you smelled like tires for about a week or two afterward. It just permeated everything. So, which I did that. And then there's a tunnel underneath that connects these buildings. This was Gottschalk's. That's of course the main Gottschalk store. This space was a surface parking lot like this. And then in 1969, the cities built a spiral parking garage and then extended Gottschalk's space with an additional 50,000 square feet. So 25,000 on the ground floor, 25,000 in the basement. And then 600 parking stalls up above. And the rent for Gottschalk's was 17 cents a square foot with no escalation in it.
Wow. Wow.
So it's a pretty good deal. Yeah. So when they left downtown, I wasn't very happy about that. I think the city did lots for that. So looks like we have some new faces. So I'll just kind of go over the basics. So this is our historic Fulton Street, which is our main street, as we would say in downtowns. Most downtowns in the United States are designed along a main street concept, and so this is ours. In 1964, the pedestrian mall went in. It was the second in the country. Kalamazoo, Michigan was the first, and we followed about 5 years after they put theirs in. It was a big deal. Look magazine, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people came to see it, just like they went to Kalamazoo. We went to Kalamazoo before we put ours in. All in all, there are about 189 pedestrian malls in the United States. When we started doing the research on what to do with the pedestrian mall, we found that 175 out of 189 had been removed. So over 90% were removed. Of the 10% or less that remained, they were primarily in cities that were either under 100,000 population, meaning they were very close to their downtown still, primarily college towns, a couple of tourist towns. If you wanted to just read the bottom line, you'd say they work really well in cities that don't need them. You know, that would be fine whether they had a pedestrian mall or not. But the pedestrian mall, what it didn't do across the country is revitalize an area. So they work in an area that's already doing pretty well. When you put them into an area that you think isn't going well, they speed the decline rather than turn it around. They were not a good revitalization tool. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Okay, so that's what happened here. That's what happened most places. That's why they were removed. And we also looked to see what happened in the cities that removed them, and it turns out that they turn around very quickly. Say 90% of those cities revitalize in 4 years or less, and then some cities take longer, 10 years or so. But almost 100%, you would say, nearly 100% revitalize in 10 years or less. Substantial revitalization, meaning ground floor retail spaces are filled, property values go up, rent rates go up, foot traffic counts go up, all of the ways that we measure the health of a downtown. So that's why this decision was made, and of course the groundbreaking was last March. The construction started in April, scheduled for 13 months. My guess is it'll be more like 15 months of construction. Because even though they did ground penetrating radar, which I even watched them do, it turns out that they have discovered lots of basements and PG&E vaults and things like that that we didn't really know were underground. So it's sort of a mystery when they do the demolition and pull the old mall up. Then they see what's underneath and what they need to fix or change or redesign. And then at that point, the construction part is pretty predictable and straightforward.
Now, on the PG&E vaults, is that where PG&E kept all their money?
electrical vaults.
They're still collecting.
And if you when I say PG&E electrical vaults, you've now used up almost all of my knowledge about how electricity works. But I have seen them. They're these big, giant metal. They look almost like cargo containers. And just in the one sewer line we'll pass, they thought there was one next to the sewer line that they designed around, and it turned out there were 5. So a lot of these things were put in so long ago that they really didn't keep great records on where everything was. So that's why it's a little bit of a mystery. Of course, you know, everything that gets built now, we have records of everything. But in those days, there were handshakes and on-the-spot decisions, and there certainly weren't CEQA documents or anything else. People just did stuff. So it's an interesting project to follow because it's not just straightforward. You know, it's not putting a road out in the subdivision, you know, where it used to be a fig orchard, now it's a road. You know, this is where people have been living and building. And so some of the basements under a building, you'd say, well, didn't they know they had a basement under there? It might be part of a basement that was from the building that was there 100 years ago, and now they built a new building on top of it in the 40s, and they just covered over part of the basement. So there was even a basement under this parking lot that they just put parking lot over, right? And you think, so it's kind of amazing there aren't more sinkholes and things like that, really, because they're just big empty spaces underneath. So the format of this renovated street here will be, let's stand in the middle so you can kind of see the proportions. So we have 28-foot wide sidewalks on the east, 14-foot sidewalks on the west. So in proportion, I don't know that I've seen California sidewalks wider than 14 feet. So our narrowest side is already very wide. 28 feet is incredibly wide. So there's a lot of room for pedestrians and outdoor dining, as well as our sculptures and fountains and all of that. So historically, this was a 4-lane street with 2 lanes of parking. Now it will be a 2-lane street with 2 lanes of parking. So that extra width is going to the pedestrians and the sculptures and artwork. So that's kind of how that worked. The other thing that happened is that if the street were put down the middle, it would give us sort of 2 medium sidewalks, and there wouldn't really be enough room for the fountains or the artwork. So so the decision was made. Elliot Balch, if you guys know Elliot Balch, he really came up with the solution to say, why do streets have to be down the middle? Let's just push it off to one side a little bit, have an extra wide landing spot on one side where the fountains can go, and the other side will be a little bit narrower, and let's keep the wide side on the east, because that's where most of the large Chinese elm trees are, so we can save more of the mature trees. So it's really kind of seems simple now, but when you're designing streets, you just don't think of making them uneven. So it was a pretty actually creative solution. We tried to respect a lot of the design elements that went into the mall. So you see the aggregate stripes that were in the mall before. Again, the fountains, 80% of the fountains, the only fountains that aren't coming back were just sort of like circles. They really didn't have any artistic character to them. But the more artistic, higher designed fountains are all being rebuilt. Some of them a little bit smaller than they were, but they're built to scale, so you won't really notice that it's, you know, 80% of the size that it was before. The design is still intact. And 100% of the artwork is currently being restored, and will all go back to the block where it currently is, except one piece, which we'll see as we walk just the next block over. So if you love the art, it's great. If you love the fountains, it's great. If you love the design, it's great. If you like good pedestrian space, it's great. But we also know that increased access and visibility and circulation is great for the businesses. And while we can like all those other things, think about what you do in a really healthy downtown. you are at businesses, right? You're shopping, you're eating, you're listening to music, you're doing all that stuff. So ultimately, to have a healthy downtown, you have to have a healthy business district. So it's trying to find that way to fit everything in and make it flow together. We will have ballards in the ground, so these little posts, I'm trying to think where they think they go right here. So they're removable ballards, so that we will be able to close the street when we have a festival, and then we'll be able to open it when the festival is open. So again, it's one of those flexibility things where you get the best of all possible worlds. How's that? Let's walk. And then this is going to be a 5-story new project. As soon as the construction is done here, and that's finished being kind of the storage yard, that will be a 5-story building with 4 floors of residential and ground floor retail. So it'll be nice to see that coming out of the ground. That AMVETS building has been purchased by Tioga Sequoia. So they're going to be expanding in there, so there'll be more interior tasting room as well as a lot of room for their storage of their grains. Plus they're getting a new grain silo tank, so they can have the grain delivered and dropped in there, and the cost of that grain goes way down for them. So it's really good for their business to have that building over there. We've got another brewery happening right behind on Broadway coming, Border Hop Brewery.
Whereabouts is that going to be on Broadway?
That is going to be, it was called Pool Tables or Us.
Oh.
Skibby, is that the right name? Yeah, so it's just down, Broadway's right there where that truck is turning, so just down Broadway on the right-hand side.
Are there any new plans down here?
Not that I've heard of yet. Nothing solid. Mecca Billiards has said that once the street is open and things are going, they would turn it into more of a billiards hall, billiards club kind of a place. But I think these are the properties that are really ripe to be fixed up. I mean, they've been sort of locked in time where they are, and the building with the big sign on the right, the big kind of parallelogram or whatever, is owned by the city. It used to be Densmore Engines, and really it being in the city's hands has done us no great favors. They were thinking it would be a park in the middle of, what was that big developer that was in town that was working with Autry's administration? Remember what?
That guy.
What? So they were gonna tear all this down and build condos and apartments and things like that. How soon we forget. And then they wanted to do the Bass Pro Shop and all that stuff down here. So the city used the parks bond to buy that Densmore Engines to make it a park in the middle of that whole development. But ultimately, those aren't the kind of good developments that we want. We want people to fix up the individual buildings, and they all have their own character. And then if one developer goes under, it doesn't take the whole thing down with them. You get sort of more of a diversity or a kind of a holistic approach to revitalization. So, and then it doesn't require massive subsidy and all the other stuff that some of us don't like. All right.
Do you know who that is back there? That's that famous photographer, Brad Polson.
Oh yes, I know that dude. We've got,
Do you know what's going to happen to that building, or who owns it?
The guy owns it. I don't know him. I've seen him a couple of times. He has basically the thrift store stuff happening, and he's a pretty avid collector of vintage stuff. So he owns that building and the property over it. I don't know what his long-term plans are, though.
He didn't close? I thought it was closed.
I think
he went under.
Part of it, I don't know if that was a separate operation or him, but he still has, you see all the stuff hanging on the fences and all that. That's all his deal. So he has kind of this whole complex over here. But I have not talked to him. I've never had a conversation with him, so I'm not sure. Yeah, then public market hopefully happening here. All right.